Hey, everybody, welcome back to the SuperBake podcast. I'm your host, SuperBake. Let's talk about stuff. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. So, I've been playing the old Doom 2016 game. I saw it on the PlayStation Store for sale. Well, it wasn't for sale, it's $20 now. And then the Doom Eternal, the sequel, was on sale for I think it was like $10 basically. So I went ahead and picked up both of them. And I just finished playing the first Doom game. And yeah, like that game rocks. It kicks ass. The reason I did this was because of the Doom the Dark Ages released this past Thursday. Today's Sunday at the time of this recording. Seems like it's been getting pretty good reviews across the board. I've seen some reviews, people have said that it feels a little bit different from the past Doom games just because of the medieval setting, and I guess it has kind of a more of an open world vibe from what I've been hearing. But other than that, it seems like it's doing pretty well review wise. But I've been playing the other games just because I've never really played very much of the Doom. I keep saying Dune, like the movie with Timothy Chalamet. I've never really played the old Doom games. I remember the what was it, like the remake that came out on like the 360 back in like the 2000s or something. I remember watching one of my buddies play that. I didn't really know much about it other than that it involved just killing demons and stuff like that. So I played the demo for the 2016 game a few years back and thought it was pretty cool, but never really got very far. Never picked up the full game. But yeah, after playing it, I can definitely understand the appeal. It is just so fucking awesome. It's a nice palate cleanser after playing other games, like especially like FromSoft games and those types of games in that genre, like the Souls-like genre. It's a good palate cleanse from that. Just like a good old mindless, just run and gun action shooter game. I really dig it. Just the melee combos you can do when you take out enemies, like the finishers, are awesome. You just feel like such a badass running around. So yeah, beat that game. I'll probably play Eternal here pretty soon, and then I don't know if I'm going to pick up the Dark Ages right away. I might wait until it goes on sale, unless like one of my buddies picks it up and just says that it's like incredible and is worth getting immediately. But I'll have to wait on that. If I do, I'll probably give my thoughts on this channel. But I just wanted to kind of just bring that up briefly, because I had forgotten that it was supposed to release this past week. I guess for some reason I kept thinking that it was coming out later this year. But yeah, a lot of good games coming out this year that I think are going to be worth keeping an eye on. That's just one that caught my interest. I might actually be a fan of the Doom series though. Like 2016 was awesome, so I may go back and replay the missions on that game again since I've got all my upgrades and stuff. I just want to go back and feel like a badass again in there. But I think Eternal is supposed to be longer than Doom 2016. I don't remember how long it is exactly, but I feel like 2016, I feel like it took me about between 12 to 15 hours to beat the story, roughly, which I think is about how long it's. I think that's what it said on howlongtobeat.com. I think that's what they said roughly what the story is if you just focus on that and don't do the side quests or anything like that. I didn't do a whole lot of side content. I collected a few of the little Doom guy dolls, but beyond that, I didn't really do much else. But yeah, game kicks ass. Really enjoyed that. All right, well, for tonight, I'm going to give my review for The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 5, Feel Her Love. So, right out the gate with this episode, I do want to say, and I'll get into like my overall thoughts towards the end, but I would say this one definitely felt like a downgrade from the previous two episodes. But anyway, we'll get into the plot real quickly. So this one follows Dina and Ellie as they are working on trying to track down one of the members of Abby's group, Nora, that we saw, one of the group members that helped take or find and take down Joel. And in this episode, we get to see more of Dina showing her skills with navigation. I like the scene where she's actually like triangulating to try to figure out Nora's position on the map. That was actually a cool moment. Again, it kind of feeds into Dina being a very capable character, being very intelligent. So I do like that that's been a consistent detail they've kept about her character in the show so far. So that scene was nice. I like that between her and Ellie. Also, I like the opening sequence where we see that one character, the leader of the wolves, talking to a soldier, and they mention about the hospital that they're working at, and they mention about the basement and how there appears to be spores in the basement, or something causing an infection, but they don't know what's causing it. Which, spoiler alert, it is for spores, which was a big thing in the games. So, and also it seemed like there was a bit of a Rat King reference in that scene too. So I thought that was kind of cool. I remember that boss from the game, definitely really creepy. Not sure if we'll see that monster in this season. I would assume it'll probably be in the second half of season two, but because there's a line the character says where she mentions, we didn't find anything down there, not even rats. And she mentions that it was like the ground zero for when they brought in the first infected from the cordyceps. So the fact that the rat line was in there felt kind of deliberate to me. I'm kind of wondering if maybe that was supposed to be a reference to the Rat King boss from the game. Could very well be, not sure. But anyways, we flash back to Dina and Ellie, and they are making their way through Seattle. And in triangulating the map, Dina discovers that there is an abandoned warehouse facility that the wolf soldiers aren't really keeping a close eye on. They don't seem to be monitoring it very carefully. One thing I will say is she mentions that the wolves are talking on the radio quite a bit and they don't seem to care about who's listening in because I guess their enemies are the Scars, who are not very technologically advanced. They just use bows and arrows for the most part. They don't really use technology, so they're not really listening in on the radio. I remember just thinking about that, like, okay, fair enough that maybe they aren't doing that, but you don't know who else is out there listening to you. So the fact that they are basically broadcasting their plans and their whereabouts, as Dina puts it, without really giving a shit, just seems really stupid to me. Because you know that there's people out there like the people in Jackson who aren't like the Scars. They do have technology, they are trying to industrialize. It just doesn't make sense to me that you would be broadcasting like that. I don't remember if that was in the games very much. From what I remember, I don't think so, but it could be something they added into the show, I guess, to explain why the wolves are doing this. But either way, I just thought that was kind of silly for them to behave that way, especially just you would think, given the fact that they have a military, they have an army, you would think that they would be trying to be a little bit more strategic about things like that. So I thought that was just really stupid. But anyway, yes, their plan is to move through the warehouse so that they can kind of bypass the wolves patrol and all that stuff. And of course, the fact that the wolves aren't patrolling it means that there's obviously going to be infected in there. I at least like that Ellie and Dina know, like they mention that. But this does lead to what is, in my opinion, one of the better parts of the episode. When they're moving through the warehouse, it's this very dark, dilapidated building, and the part where they run into these smart infected, similar to what Ellie ran into earlier in the season, was genuinely creepy. Because at first they think it's just one, and then when they realize they are surrounded, that was a pretty big oh shit moment and genuinely creepy. And then they get saved by Jesse. Jesse shows up, which I remember that from the game too. Jesse does meet up with Ellie's group again. And then he mentions that he and Tommy have shown up and then they split up and Tommy's out on his own doing something else. So I'm guessing this means that this is going to be part of Tommy's story in this show. And then now we're probably going to get more of Tommy from the game where he's trying to hunt down Abby's group. But what I don't necessarily like about this is that, again, Tommy doesn't really know what Abby and her group look like. Even if Ellie and Dina describe them to him, that's not the same thing as actually seeing them firsthand like he did in the game because he was actually there. He was there instead of Dina when Joel got killed. So I don't know how the writers are going to fit that into the show. I'm pretty concerned about how that's going to play out. But it was cool seeing Jesse again. It was cool seeing him being reunited with these two characters, and he does come in clutch and save them. Although I will say, he shows up by himself and then takes out the some of the infected, the rest run away. I feel like they don't normally do that, right? Well, these are the smart infected. So I don't know. Maybe they're from what I remember from the game, I remember they were pretty aggressive too. But it just to me it seems more like they would just continue to attack. I don't know. I guess because they're smarter, maybe they realize that they didn't have the advantage anymore. Not really sure on that, but either way, cool save by Jesse's character, and it was cool to see him show back up in the show. I also like the part where they do end up on the Scars territory. We get another pretty brutal scene where they actually see the Scars and they see how they have kind of a cult mentality where they're torturing a wolf soldier. And the part where that guy, that leader of that group, is making that chant and then he basically disembowels the dude, that gives us pretty good insight into what the Scars have been doing to the other wolf soldiers. We saw in the previous episode that they had the soldiers were strung up on the ceiling and their guts had been everywhere. So now we kind of see like this is how they've been doing it. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting scene. And then Ellie goes back into the hospital to find Nora's character because she realizes that Nora is in that hospital. And then we get what is essentially a chase sequence between Ellie and Nora's character. And for the most part, it's pretty much shot for shot like it is in the game. I remember that was a very distinct part from the game was when you're chasing Nora through the hospital. And it's pretty faithful to the game in my personal opinion. Like the scene where she first shows up and she's holding Nora at gunpoint and then asks if she remembers her. And then Nora mentions that she still has nightmares about Joel screaming and then even calls Joel a little bitch, which pisses Ellie off. Even in the game, I always thought that was kind of a stupid thing for her character to say. It's like you're being held at gunpoint. You probably don't want to insult the person that's holding the gun up to your face, but regardless, I guess it makes for drama. But yeah, the chase sequence again plays out pretty much exactly like it does in the show, but there is a fairly decent difference from there that I have a kind of a problem with. And this is really kind of the last 10, 15 minutes of the episode, so I'll kind of get into this and then kind of back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast. This is really where one of my biggest issues with this episode comes from. So Ellie basically chases her into the basement of the hospital, and that scene where when they go into the basement actually seemed they changed how it happened from the game. From what I remember in the game, the way it happens is after Ellie catches up with Nora, there's a brief fight between the two, like a little scuffle, and then they fall through either the floor or something, and then they both end up in the basement inadvertently. And then I believe a bunch of soldiers come down too to try to get them, and there's infected down there. And that's when Ellie runs into Nora at the end of the hallway and then begins to basically beat her. Well, in the game, a big difference is that when Ellie is talking to Nora, she's trying to get information to find out where Abby is, and of course Nora won't tell her. And then basically Ellie tells her like, if you give me information, then I'll make your death quicker because Nora realizes that Ellie's not going to die from the infection. This scene in the show is different in that Ellie basically just goes and starts beating Nora almost immediately. Like she asks her where Abby is, and of course Nora refuses. But then it almost feels like Abby or Ellie goes like just full on psycho mode. Like just the lighting of the episode with the red, and then you see Ellie's face as she's looking at Nora, and it just looks like she's almost kind of I don't want to say enjoying it, but I was definitely getting impressions like she was going full on psycho on Nora in this scene. And I think I know what this is missing. In the game, I believe there was another guy that Ellie and Dina take out before they get to Nora, if I'm not mistaken. It's like the guy that wears the ball cap. I can't remember his name, but I think he's the first person they encounter. I think there's a couple other guys too that Tommy takes out. Again, probably not going to be in the show now because of Tommy not being in that big scene. But yeah, like I think there's at least one guy that Ellie takes out before she gets to Nora. And even in that scene in the game, it still felt like I never got the impression that Ellie was like behaving like a psychopath. I mean, maybe a little bit, but it at least kind of made sense. She's trying to get revenge. This scene almost kind of makes it seem like she's just beating Nora, not just for information, but because maybe she's enjoying it. I don't know if that was supposed to be intentional. Maybe the writers are supposed to give or trying to give Ellie like more of a darker edge. I'm not really sure. But for me, this scene felt like it did not have the emotional hit that it should have. It just felt like it was a character beating another character just and just to be like just for messed up reasons essentially. Like it just felt like a full on psycho mode for Ellie's character. So like she hits her once and then asks her, where Abby is and then of course Nora refuses and then Ellie hits her again. And I think the problem that I have with this is that this doesn't feel like this is what Ellie would do. Like, we didn't see that gradual change from Ellie to turn into the character that would do this. Like, up to this point, she's been traveling with Dina, and their journey has been yeah, I mean, it's had some pretty messed up shit, for sure, but there's still been that lightheartedness to it. These are 2 friends who care about each other, and even though Dina is not here in this scene, obviously, because of the spores, it still feels like the Ellie that we've seen to this point, I don't feel like she would do this. It doesn't seem within her character, at least at this point where we're at, to just go on full on beating this chick. Yes, you could make the argument that maybe she's using the knowledge with the fact that Nora was there when Joel was killed and that she just insulted Joel. But at the same time, this just really makes it seem like this seems like an Ellie that would have been doing this for a while, and I did not get that impression from this scene. I think that they messed up by not having the part where Ellie and Dina take out that guy with the hat. At the very least, if they'd done that, you could have seen Ellie show a bit of a darker side to herself, and it would have at least helped segue into this scene. But instead, we just get, yes, Ellie and Dina have taken out a couple of wolf soldiers and stuff, and they've had to fight their way through some infected to get to this point. But now we see Ellie showing a very dark side of herself. And while we can understand where her anger is coming from with Nora's character, this still felt like, I don't know, like it's not that I felt bad for Nora's character necessarily, but it just felt like they were trying to give Ellie this really dark edge to her character that just didn't make sense to me. So, in my personal opinion, I felt like this scene did not hit because of that. And it really needed to, because this was kind of one of the big moments that we've been building up to. We're 5 episodes into the season now. And one of the big reasons we've been, tagging along with Ellie and Dina is because we want to see how this is going to play out when Ellie inevitably runs into Abby's group. And now we see her finally come into contact with Nora. And it just felt like it lacked an emotional punch. It followed the games pretty closely for the most part, but this just didn't seem like it was, I don't know, it just felt like it was missing something. So I was not I wasn't into this scene. And unfortunately, it's kind of the big scene of the episode, so it kind of feels like the episode falls flat because of it. So I'll just kind of go over some of my overall thoughts for the episode. Overall, I have to say I was not a huge fan of this episode. There are things about it that I thought were pretty good overall. The warehouse scene with the smart infected was genuinely creepy. I liked that scene. The scene with the scars where they take out the soldier was pretty brutal. Kind of gave us kind of a glimpse into how they operate, how they think. So that was pretty cool. And the opening scene between the leader of the wolves and the soldier talking about the basement and trying to understand what's going on down there with the infection was pretty cool. And also, I like the scene in the basement where we actually get to see the infected in the walls creating spores, and we see like how that's getting into the air now, and now people can get infected just by breathing it in, which is a cool little reveal for the infected, for the cordyceps. So all that stuff was pretty nice. I liked that, and it seemed pretty faithful to the game. Really, for me, the ending scene, just the last probably like 10, 15 minutes, I think are where the episode really kind of slips up. The scene with Ellie and Nora, this was a big scene, and it just felt like it lacked the emotional impact that it needed to have, that it had more in the game. I feel like in the game they did a better job of showing us Ellie's gradual decline into going into revenge. And I think that's kind of one of the advantages of having the game is that because you play as Ellie and because you spend more time with her character playing as her, we get to see her change. We get to see her gradual shift in her character, not just from the actions that she takes, but even from like her interactions with other characters like Jesse and Dina. Seeing how she interacts with these characters and seeing how it informs her character and how she changes as a result of it throughout the gameplay is very important. And in the show, because it's a shorter format, we don't get that. I'm sure the reason they probably left out, or at least part of the reason they left out the first victim of Abby's group is probably for time constraints. They probably just couldn't have him in there. I remember that was one thing that I noticed about Abby's group in the first episode that they're introduced is that they're noticeably missing members from the game. And again, probably because of time constraints. But I think this episode shows that they really needed to have that because for Abby to just go straight into just beating Nora like this, again, just for me personally, this did not feel like it worked. I need to see her gradual decline. It's not so much what she did that I had an issue with. I needed to see Ellie become this character. I needed to see that shift in her character to this scene, and I just feel like the show did not get that. So I feel like this was a pretty big miss for the plot overall. We'll have to see how they handle, how Ellie handles the rest of Abby's group, as I'm sure she's going to run into more before the season's over with, or at least this half is over. But yes, for me, unfortunately, I do think the final scene of this episode, or at least the scene involving Nora, just didn't work for me. And unfortunately, that's a pretty big deal. And then the last scene, we actually get to see Ellie in a flashback sequence where she actually is remembering a memory with Joel, which I assume we'll get to see more of that in the next episode, as far as like how that's going to play out. If I had to guess, I would say what we're probably going to get from that is more of her interactions with Joel leading up to what happened between them that made Ellie mad at Joel. Because when Nora is talking to Ellie, she mentions how Joel shot everybody in the hospital when he saved Ellie originally in season one, and Ellie says she knows. So this shows us that Ellie at least knows what Joel did. Up to this point, I mean, at least in the show, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it had been confirmed that Ellie had her suspicions about Joel, but I don't remember if it had ever actually been confirmed that she knew for sure what Joel had did, even though I kind of got the impression that she did know. Even in the game, I think it was pretty clear that she knew Joel had done something pretty messed up in the first season, and this seems to all but symbolize it. But of course, in this moment, you could make the argument that all Ellie really cared about was just killing Nora. So there's that too. But yeah, either way, this definitely felt like kind of a step down from the last two episodes. I really liked episodes 3 and 4. The first two episodes of the season were pretty good for, somewhat. But 3 and 4, I feel like, were an improvement. But 5 definitely feels like a step down in terms of the writing, in terms of like the character motivations. Ellie getting to where she is when she attacks Nora just felt like it lacked the emotional punch. So this episode kind of has me nervous for how the rest of the season is going to play out. So time will tell. We'll see how the rest of this part of season 2 goes. But yeah, as of right now, I would definitely say season 5 definitely felt like a noticeable decline from the last two episodes, in my personal opinion. All right, well, I think that's going to conclude tonight's episode. Once again, if you like what you heard, I am on Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. It helps the show out a lot, and I definitely appreciate it. And I will catch you all next time. Take care, everyone.